My name is Ethan. Welcome to Creature Guide Live Daily News. And put your thoughts into the comments and let's dive into the first article. So, from Sci News, carnivorous dinosaurs as big as T Rex lived in Jurassic Australia. Paleontologists have analyzed 151 to 165 million year old dinosaur footprints from 11 sites in southern Queensland, most of which produced a large length of 30 to 50 centimeters, or somewhere between 1 to like 1.8 feet. So, these are pretty large and very large size length greater than 50 centimeters. Theropod dinosaur tracks, including Australia's largest carnivorous dinosaur footprint, 79 centimeters long. Yeah, well, I'd say for Australia itself, compared to other theropods from certain other regions of the world, also in different time periods, this wouldn't be considered the largest, but this is more of like a larger, medium sized species of theropod, whatever this is. So yeah, this is kind of surprising. Also, coming from the Jurassic at this point is what's shocking. Like I was guessing maybe the early Cretaceous for a second when looking at the size of these footprints or the description of these footprints. So I'm guessing the reconstruction of a Jurassic dinosaur track maker from southern Queensland in front of a silhouette of the largest known Tyrannosaurus rex. That's a rather slender T Rex specifically, and maybe Tarbosaurus would fit that model in the background a bit better. But I have no idea who could make this type of a footprint over in Australia, considering most of the different species of theropods we find over in Australia, which are also few in number, tend to be very sleek or very lean or almost sometimes skinny in overall build. So I have no idea. That looks like a very robust Carcharodontosaur or possibly even an Allosaur. I've always wondered where were Australia's big carnivorous dinosaurs? Well, also considering we had very large species of sauropods roaming the continent during the early Cretaceous. But the late Jurassic is relatively scarce when it comes to different species of dinosaurs in the region. But I think we found them right here in Queensland, said lead author Dr. Anthony Remilio, a paleontologist in the School of Chemistry and Molecular Biosciences at the University of Queensland. The specimens of these gigantic dinosaurs were not fossilized bones, which are the sorts of things that are typically housed at museums. Wait, so did we find? Because it sounds like so far we just had footprints of the animal. Rather, we looked at footprints, which in Australia are much more abundant. These tracks were made by dinosaurs walking through the swamp forests that once occupied much of the landscape of what is now southern Queensland. Okay, well, here's the footprint. Wow, that's a very clear sign of a theropod. Like even the toe claws are very much intact. There, there are
That's extremely clear.
Yeah, I mean, possibly they ran it over or they filled it in with some material and was able to get more detail out of the footprint.
I just meant all the way down to that claw.
Yeah, well, part of the foot is a little less clear, like especially around the palm or the base of the ankle region, and even the toe over here. Like this is a bit blurry, as in like it's just harder to tell where the toe would be. But this is definitely bit more of a clear depiction.
Manuel Suarez says, "Hi, hello."
Well, welcome aboard, fellow Allosaurus. So let's see. Let me know what your thoughts are on this large footprint that has been discovered in Australia of some mysterious meat-eating dinosaur. Also, from the Jurassic. I mean, I think we have found footprints of like megaraptorids from the early Cretaceous around 120 million years ago in Australia and specifically Queensland. But that animal was only maybe somewhere around 22 feet in length at most, or pushing around 6.8 meters. This is something that could consume Australovenator for breakfast. Okay, so I guess when looking at different species of allosaurs or even megalosaurs, I guess we can travel to another part of the world, especially close to this time scale, considering it's pretty much scarce at this point in Australia. But we could still bring up species from later in time, maybe the Dubrulosaurus. Dubruilosaurus.
No, you were off on that one. It's Dubruiillos.
Yeah, he's one of those puzzling species of megalosaurs when it comes to the genre or genus.
Yes, no.
Yeah, this is well, it technically what it's being reconstructed as would be classified as a member of Megalosauroideae, which is basically what every species of Spinosaur was a member of. So whether it's the Baryonychids, the members of Spinosauridae such as Spinosaurus, Siamosaurus, they would all be megalosaurs, but this is not who I'm referring to. The Spinosaurs at this point had not evolved yet. This is much better. This is a species of megalosaur from the mid Jurassic around 163 million years ago. And it's a medium sized species of theropod dinosaur, even for the time. It's probably also close to the size of the Australovenator megaraptor of early Cretaceous Australia, which is somewhere around 20 feet in length or pushing 6 meters. Also, probably weighed in at around 17 to 1,800 pounds or a little over 800 kilograms. So, this animal was likely feeding on earlier species of sauropods in the region that inhabited, different parts of Europe, and possibly even certain earlier species of ornithopods or possibly even stegosaurs in the region. It has a much longer and narrow skull compared to certain other species of megalosaurs. Actually, even around the time that it existed and later after, depending on the species. This is actually a pretty good reconstruction, despite the black and white look. I think this is a much more recent depiction. The artist just decided to focus on just not really putting in any other coloration, which it still looks good. I do wonder specifically, though, who the earlier iguanodontian might be in the background. It's definitely not the Camptosaurus of late Cretaceous, not late Cretaceous, late Jurassic North America around 150 million years ago. However, there seems to be certain pterosaurs in the sky that have like a pteranodonted look, and the pteranodontids will not evolve until the Cretaceous period after 143 million years ago. However, there were already species, it looks like, of different members of the um what is it, the Testacmenidae lineage of pterosaurs that were already evolving crests that would resemble a wide variety of different species that would appear later into the Cretaceous.
This guy looks like he's made out of Play-Doh.
Oh, yeah, I've seen this is a model from, I think, the early 2000s. It could be 90s. It's, an odd megalosaur depiction, like, even for the time, but I guess it is the closest to Megalosaurus not Megalosaurus, the Brontosaurus from the time that it was made.
Crystal's in the chat.
Oh, welcome aboard, Sauropod. Yeah, let me know what, you think about this odd species of Jurassic predator.
She asked what she's missed so far.
Well, we were looking at certain species. Well, looked seemed to be didn't show us pictures of like the Troodon Maiasaura or mysterious sauropod eggs, but it was going over the different temperatures. It seems that those animals were.
Oh, it was talking about the footprints.
Oh,
What?
I was.
Where? I think you're on yesterday.
Yeah, I mixed it up with last times. So, um, basically, we're going over, at least the article was stating that there's this immense dinosaur footprint, at least for Cretaceous Australia, not Cretaceous, Jurassic Australia, that was discovered over in Queensland, so the northeastern part of the country. and with the footprint reaching a length of somewhere around 2.7 feet, which for Australia is huge. But the problem is in the Jurassic of Australia, very few dinosaurs, if any bones have been found during that time, they're quite fragmentary. And I don't know, at least at the moment, of any species from that time, at least on that continent. Now, Debrulosaurus is possibly a relative of whatever creature made that distinct marking. However, when it comes to larger, more, I guess you could say, Carcharodontosaur or larger allosaur looking megalosaurs, or at least reaching the size of like Carcharodontosaurus, but the creature that's describing might be around 33 feet or 10 meters, and Carcharodontosaurus was over 10 feet longer. So, I guess a creature, certain species of Torvosaurus were around that length, even Allosaurus.
Wait,
And actually, you could possibly even say that the footprint looked a bit similar. Yeah, we got a problem here. This is like well, it's got a mixture of like I'd say a Tarbosaurus face, but you could even say it's like a Jurassic Park T Rex skull build. But the problem is that the specific horn-like structures toward the front of the eye sockets resemble that of like either certain allosaur species or other earlier tyrannosaurs, but I still wouldn't compare it to even Albertosaurus. Albertosaurus has almost sharp-looking horn-like structures above its eye sockets, or like just in front. Um, Even earlier species of Tyrannosaurus, this is not really a characteristic. Now, there was that new species that was discovered, but they still had much sharper eye socket horns. Let's see. Now, the rest of the animal, it doesn't look like that there's any evidence for T Rex being feathered. In fact, many of the larger species of Tyrannosaurs, when fully grown, considering looking at this skull build, this wouldn't be of a, Tyrannosaur chick, or at least a juvenile. So, which would possibly be covered in feathers, but they would also be in a much lighter coating. This looks like feather plumage that would help keep the animal warm, which is something that the larger tyrannosaurs, for the most part, did not have to be concerned about, unless you're talking about maybe Gorgosaurus in cooler regions, considering we have found Gorgosaurus over in Alaska. And that was a 32-foot long carnivore that existed over in Alaska and possibly even Alberta, Canada, around 75 million years ago. Also, during a time in the Cretaceous that it had cooled down massively, and you had many blizzards in Canada, and even Russia in different areas. Also, the teeth are sticking out. That should not be occurring. You should have lips covering the whole mouth. And I think the arms might be a little large compared to its body size. I mean, if you're looking at certain older tyrannosaurs like Tyrannus from China, around 122 million years ago, it would have had, possibly in some cases, even slightly longer arms, but it would have had 3 fingers, not just two. There was actually a, oh, who was that? There was a species of Tyrannosaur from the late Cretaceous that had actually quite long arms compared to its body size, but only 2 fingers, but it had a very sleek sort of a build, unlike this specific specimen. And also, I think the tail was oddly placed, but technically, as you would head towards the end of the tail, it's very likely with different Tyrannosaur individuals, it might have pointed now and then towards the ground when it was standing. Also, it's possible when even the Tyrannosaur was younger that the feathers might stop, like similar to different species of ornithomimids, so further up the thigh and not towards the beginning or the top of the metatarsal bone or the ankles. So there's a lot off about this specific individual. Now, I'd say, I mean, at least when adding the feathers, let's say it's supposed to be like a juvenile Tarbosaurus, for instance, over in 70 million year old Mongolia, they could possibly really help it camouflage with the environment. Seeing it from afar, I mean, you possibly couldn't. It'd be at least really hard to catch a glimpse of it, even when it was moving in some cases. Um, See, I think okay, so yeah, pulled it up as Debrulosaurus. So this is definitely not a megalosaur. Tyrannosaurs are not even part of the megalosaur lineage.
Okay, Crystal asks, in the United States, what was the most dangerous and largest dinosaur?
It could possibly fall in the lines of Triceratops hortus. You also had Triceratops porsus, which was not far behind in overall size and likely even when it came to being quite defensive or offensive in different scenarios. Considering they both had to coexist with T Rex and also likely even Dakota Raptor and another, not including Nanotyrannus, but another species of Tyrannosaur.
She was very specific. She said in Georgia.
Oh, geez. Georgia? Um, Gosh, dinosaurs are rare in the state of Georgia. Um, that's a good question. I don't know. It might be certain species of hadrosaur from maybe either an iguanodontid, iguanodontid, a basically, I do not know. That is one of those states. I mean, Alabama, we find a few more dinosaurs from. Florida, they're nearly non-existent. It's just simply that it was underwater for a large period, and it's like really when it comes to many different types of sediments in Florida, it doesn't hit until later into the Cenozoic era, the time of mammals. South Carolina, we have, I believe, certain older sediments, but dinosaurs are still rare. They definitely start becoming more noticeable in North Carolina. I will just have to look and see what Mesozoic animals we have found from Georgia because I believe we have found certain dinosaurs. They're just not very common. Louisiana, they're also almost non existent. I'm trying to think of who else. Yeah, Mississippi, the northern region, it's possible we might have found certain dinosaurs in the area. But definitely like the coastal regions of the southeastern United States, it only goes back to somewhere during the Ice Age or maybe around somewhere between 1 to 2 million years ago or during the Pleistocene epoch. So we do find remnants of different mastodon, like American mastodon specifically, individuals, different Columbian mammoths, ground sloths.
Wouldn't that area have been underwater?
During the Ice Age, no, because the
Oh,
glaciers
no,
would
I
have.
meant before that.
Oh, that's what seems to be the case. Even like the coastal plains of Texas itself was underwater, but it is quite abundant depending on where you are. Like even certain bayous and creeks have hosted mastodon tusks, Columbian mammoth tusks to I think a lesser extent. I still think they did occur or do occur. Even certain saber-toothed cats like Smilodon fatalis and Smilodon gracilis, likely from Florida. Actually, that would be probably somewhere between like 2.5 to 2.8 million years ago. So maybe even early Pliocene epoch. And also, we do find Ice Age animals over in Georgia, as well as Alabama. But yeah, Alabama is a bit interesting. It's probably what's occurring is maybe in certain northern regions of Georgia, especially as you approach the Appalachian Mountain Range or the Smoky Mountains. They possibly become a bit more abundant over there, but really, it's like even different parts of like central Alabama. We find certain hadrosaurs and I believe even certain theropods in the region. There might have been a rare ceratopsian, also from the area, but all being Cretaceous. I don't believe it goes to the Jurassic or Triassic in many instances, or really any. And those layers in time you tend to find in different areas of the central United States or areas like Texas and even to the western states.
Crystal says she has to go to bed for school tomorrow, but she'll make sure she watches the entire weekend one. But the weekend ones are at 1:30 Central Time,
Um, yeah.
so they're in the afternoon.
Um, So yeah, it's like when you're in different areas of New Mexico, Arizona, is when you bump into different Triassic layers. Also, West Texas as well. It's how we find different animals like Postosuchus, Coelophysis, Placerius, the tusked Dicynodont in the region. It's just not as common. I mean, Placerius outside of the Placerius Quarry over in Arizona is next to non-existent, or it's not necessarily absent. It's just that they're always found by themselves and not really in a herd-like accumulation like the Placerius Quarry. That's why it's named that. So that's a bit odd. We do find certain other creatures that seem to be like that. I think in some cases even with dinosaurs. But when you're looking at different species of like larger herbivores over in Alberta, Canada, especially the ceratopsians, like the pachyrhinosaurs, chasmosaurs, many cases they usually tend to be found together, so indicating that they were successful herd animals. Alrighty, well, let's see what else we have here from Australia. So, Dr. Romilio and colleagues documented a total of 20 fossil dinosaur tracks and 5 trackways from the Walloon coal measures of Oakey and Rosewood districts in southern Queensland. They identified a total of 11 track bearing mine sites, 1 at Oakey and 10 at Rosewood, and 4 dinosaur track types.
I like how you say Okie. It's
Um,
funny.
oh, okay. Yeah, but I just got confused by the mining sites and then the footprints. So large and very large tracks were more common than small tracks. That's actually quite odd. Usually it's the opposite, where you have several small dinosaur tracks, like being from smaller, in this case, likely different species of ornithischians. There aren't any dromaeosaurs in this region. There are species of coelurosaurs, but likely not them. When referring to the dromaeosaurs, who else outside of I mean, like, different species of elasmarians are quite common within this region. So animals like Leonosaura, but not during the late Jurassic. At least we haven't found any specimens of them yet. Most of the tracks belong to theropods, same group of dinosaurs that includes Australovenator, Velociraptor, and their modern day descendants birds. Velociraptor also wasn't around at this point. He was existing over Mongolia around 71 million years ago during the last 5 million years of the Cretaceous. So most of these footprints are around 50 to 60 centimeters in length, with some of the really huge tracks measuring nearly 80 centimeters. We estimate these tracks were made by large bodied carnivorous dinosaurs, some of which were up to 3 meters high at the hips and probably around 10 meters long. Or, well, okay, 3 meters high at the hips would be around 10 feet. So it's definitely not a short theropod dinosaur.
It turns out it's a short theropod dinosaur with giant, huge clown feet.
Yeah, that would be concerning. He's got a really big foot problem.
It's a good duck.
Uh, well, I guess, yeah, but even duck-like dinosaurs, I'm not referring to even the hadrosaurs, but even certain large ornithomimids that were semi-aquatic, like the Dinohyrus, still had a very theropod foot look. However, in certain species, like even Spinosaurus, there seems to be evidence for these dinosaurs having a somewhat webbed foot, but not to the extreme of certain species of semi-aquatic species of waterfowl or wetland birds today, like species of ducks and geese, for instance.
Melon JC says hi.
Well, welcome aboard, Ralph Sukian Crocodilomorph. Watch out for coelophysis. But yeah, let me know what you think about these odd theropod dinosaurs and these footprints. So to put that into perspective, Tyrannosaurus Rex. Oh, yeah, and also 10 meters is 33 feet. So huge for an Australian theropod dinosaur in general. To put that into perspective, Tyrannosaurus Rex got to about 3.25 meters at the hips. No, he could. I mean, shorter individuals for sure, but he could reach somewhere around 13 feet or pushing 4 meters and attained lengths of 12 to 13 meters. Yeah, that's about right. So somewhere around 39 to 43 feet in length. But it didn't appear until 90 million years after a Queensland giant. Yeah, it sounds about right. I mean, that would be around like 68, 67 million years ago. So the Queensland tracks were probably made by giant carnosaurs, a group that includes Allosaurus. Interesting. I mean, that probably makes sense also at this point. But supposedly the allosaurs were a bit more adjacent to Australia at this point than the megalosaurs. I mean, I guess that is possible. Hmm. Would be interesting if all of a sudden it's another species of Allosaurus, but it's probably unlikely. Though, you did have different species of Allosaurus existing like over 151 million years ago. 160 million years ago is a few million years before the Allosaurus genus would evolve. At the time, these were probably some of the largest predatory dinosaurs on the planet. If you're, I mean, around 33 feet, 160 million years ago, it definitely is reaching the largest species. Though it's a bit of a debate. If you're pushing around 151 million years ago, it's slightly smaller than certain species of like Torvosaurus and Allosaurus. Hmm. Just wondering who else to bring up. I'm just surprised, like it also didn't even bring up those little Ornithischian tracks, which is fine. But I guess like we could possibly bring up Dreadnoughtus. This is from a different part of the world and much later. But Dreadnoughtus.
Okay, this guy just looks funny.
Yeah, that's him. So, yeah, he was discovered back in the late 2010s, and this is one of the longer species of sauropods to have existed during the late Cretaceous period. This is also pushing somewhere around 70 million years ago, and Dreadnoughtus was probably pushing somewhere around 90 to 100 feet in length, or a little over 33 meters, and probably weighed in at somewhere between 30 to 40 tons. So it was definitely a larger species of Titanosauridae. Now, um, it is interesting because it does have a very diplodocid sort of a look, but the diplodocids had already died out around 90 million years ago. Yeah, I mean, this is a good reconstruction of the Dreadnoughtus. They're definitely giving it a very wide sort of a neck. In fact, it almost looks a little too wide compared to its body size, at least on the front individual.
It's funny.
Yeah, and he's also got a very wide core, which is very likely for different species of sauropods in general, considering they would have needed very large digestive systems to help digest all of that hard plant material.
John Doe is in the chat.
Oh, welcome aboard, Theropod. Yeah, we're going over or these large footprints have been discovered in late Jurassic Australia of a large, mysterious theropod dinosaur, probably reaching around 33 feet or 10 meters. And also looking into sauropods and megalosaurs from different parts of the Jurassic and Cretaceous periods. Well, this is definitely giving it a much more sleek sort of a build. It is interesting. It is giving it, yeah, those distinct osteoderms along the neck, the back vertebrae, and the caudal vertebrae along the tail, which is possible for certain species of Argentinosaurs. I mean, not Argentinosaurs, Titanosaurs. There's only one Argentinosaurus, and it existed over in South America around 98 million years ago. So before Dreadnoughtus would have evolved and was larger due to it being the largest species of dinosaur. But Dreadnoughtus also likely roamed in herds of like 20 to 30 individuals. It was probably feeding on different species of conifer trees in the region, maybe even occasionally feeding on different species of ferns and flowers, but likely, considering conifers were just a bit more of easy access for the animal, it was probably not a very large part of its diet. And no, this animal was not a carnivore. It's just seems to be mainly a species of herbivore, It also happens to have a very small brain compared to its body size, which is not necessarily too surprising for the sauropod lineage in general. I'd say the prosauropods probably had slightly larger brains compared to their body size than when looking at the sauropods, despite arriving much earlier in time. Now, maybe the sauropods might have had a slightly larger frontal cortex compared to the prosauropods, but at least comparing it to their overall body size, the prosauropods, they might have been slightly larger. There also seems to be, I mean, it is interesting that the prosauropods had very dexterous hands, could in some cases either be bipedal or quadrupedal for extended periods. The largest ones reach somewhere around 40 feet in length. They're pushing 12 meters and probably weighing in at around 11 tons. Certain species from the late Triassic of Argentina around 210 million years ago. Um, but you could say they didn't have the immense sizes, but it's just is interesting how they could just create like a um or just to have a wide range of different types of behaviors. And it just seems that sauropods in many cases would be quite limited, but it would depend on the species. Okay, well, I guess let's head to another part of the not the Mesozoic, but the Phanerozoic era in general. So, from Sci News, Devonian four-limbed creature reveals insights into how vertebrate hand evolved from fish fins. So a 1.57 meter, 5.2 foot long specimen of Elpis, Elpistostege watsoni from the Devonian period of Canada has yielded the missing evolutionary link in the fish to tetrapod transition. So this might help answer Tiktaalik's continuous progression into the wide range of different terrestrial animals that we know of today, such as the amphibians, reptiles, the dinosaurs, and mammals. Well as you could probably even include the pseudosuchians or the crocodilomorphs, but they're just reptiles. Who else was I missing? Pterosaurs. Maybe even probably even the Sauroptegan, marine reptiles, so, like, the pliosaurs, the long-necked plesiosaurs, and the mosasaurs, and the ichthyosaurs. So, let's see what else or what we have specifically here. Wow. Yeah, I will say that is quite a step forward from Tiktaalik, at least looking at the skull. I mean, you could say Tiktaalik had very similar sorts of teeth. In fact, let's bring up Tiktaalik. Tiktaallik. Yep, this is one of the only specimens that we have discovered of Tiktaalik. And it came from the northern Canadian Arctic islands back in the early 2000s, I believe, and is likely the ancestor to all terrestrial vertebrates today, as well as many marine vertebrates. So it had a somewhat ability to move on land, but still wasn't very efficient, but it could move in like a sort of push up position. And it's very likely that it lived in the low oxygenated environments of different swamps in the late Devonian period over 365 million years ago. It's not a very large, lobe-finned fish, but it's still reaching probably somewhere around, maybe 3.5 to 4 feet in length, possibly even slightly longer, or pushing around 1.3 meters. So it was also very likely at the time, looking also at the tooth structure, a species of carnivore. So it's feeding on different species of fish. I'm trying to think of who else. I mean, maybe it's possible in certain instances there might have been cephalopods in the area, but I highly doubt it. It seems like cephalopods are mostly a saltwater animal or each other. At least that's what it appears to be. I don't know. That fin, unless it's a younger individual, but could be just a just a large fish. Well, I mean, he's his own type of evolving fish too, but from another family. So it's not exactly cannibalism, but then it kind of is too. Um but then again, you could say that's kind of like saying, an Allosaurus is feeding on a Stegosaurus and both of them are dinosaurs, so and that's not cannibalism. Yeah, it's fine that he's eating this fish. I'm glad he's filling up his stomach. At least, hopefully, he has enough room. But he's acting a bit like a snake in this instance, and he's not. Is he? Yeah, I mean, he is related. The ancestor.
So John Doe says, mechanically speaking, our limbs still move in a fish swimming style, movement, and I'm speaking in the most simplistic way.
Yeah, I mean, you could say that. In a while, like specifically when you're making certain types of strokes when you're swimming. Um, Yeah, I think I'm going to look into a bit more when it comes to like different types of lobe-finned fish, but especially when it comes to Tiktaalik itself, and a little more into like what we know about like the specific muscles and tendons and the specific type of posture that this animal was likely able to create when it was on land, but it probably didn't stay on land for very long. Maybe it would when it was submerged underwater, kind of like a hippo to an extent, and might have slightly walked on the swamp floor. But even then, it might have been relatively meek, or at least just primitive in the way it walked.
And could control its buoyancy.
I don't know on that part.
Oh, no, I just meant if that's how it also was moving.
I mean, that's what. Well, yeah. I mean, I guess that's what I would assume, considering it's having to release air to get to the bottom. So it's very possible in certain instances he might have been the top predator, but there were other occasions, especially it being the late Devonian, there were larger species of more true fish that would have hunted Tiktaalik as well.
He looks funny.
Yeah, it is interesting. He does have a very similar look to different species that would evolve later into the Carboniferous period, but even to the later Devonian, that would have had a very efficient ability to walk on land. But also, I was going to say Diplocaulus, the boomeranged amphibian from early Permian, Texas, around 275 million years ago. But this guy does have much longer limbs compared to Tiktaalik, and also more distinct teeth, which Tiktaalik has, but they're smaller. It is interesting also just where their eyes are placed. There's more of them too. At least I think they're of the same species. So the evolution of fishes into tetrapods. And by the way, dinosaurs, amphibians, reptiles, birds, mammals are all tetrapods. So we can make this International Tetrapod Day, Tetradod Pride, um, Tetrapod Power, Four-legged vertebrates, of which humans belong, was one of the most significant events in the history of life. Vertebrates were then able to leave the water and conquer the land. In order to complete this transition, one of the most significant changes was the evolution of hands and feet. In order to understand the evolution from a fish fin to a tetrapod limb, paleontologists study the fossils of lobe-finned fish and tetrapods from the middle and upper Devonian 393 to 359 million years ago. Oh yeah, I guess you could say that the Devonian began somewhere around 410 million years ago. Beforehand was the Silurian period. So you would have different species of Eurypterids, which we actually could bring up. Known as, well, these are the tetrapods, Elpistostagelians. These include the well-known Tiktaalik rossi from Arctic Canada, known only from incomplete specimens. Well, yeah, that's the thing. I don't believe we have found a complete specimen of Tiktaalik, but like most species of prehistoric animals, what we have of Tiktaalik is a very decent specimen. We can obtain quite a bit from him. Despite the limbs being quite small compared to its body size, there was some of the most efficient, I guess, locomotions when it came to moving on land that had evolved at that point. Okay, let's bring up a species of sea scorpion, the Eurypterus. So Eurypterus. Sorry. So this was a successful group of organisms that existed in the ocean during the Silurian period and likely even into the Ordovician. But around 430 million years ago, you had these what are referred to as sea scorpions, but they're actually very distantly related to sea scorpions. Like they are much more closely related to them than many or most other lineages of arthropods, but these are basically the larger marine arthropods of the time. They would have fed on different species of not sea scorp. Well, I mean, in some cases, other eurypterids or sea scorpions, different lineages of trilobites, and in some cases, possibly like even later species of the orthocone or who would it be? Um, it was a group of distantly related cephalopods that would become like the later species of ammonites. They weren't the direct ancestors to them, but like these long-shelled, tentacled marine creatures. You could almost say it's like a different version of certain squids of today. Yeah, I mean, this is a good reconstruction of the Eurypterids or Eurypterus. So there they are. Yeah, the orthocones in the background. Those also seem to be carnivorous at the time, like the Eurypterids. Since certain species of Eurypterids might have simply have just been scavengers, possibly some were omnivorous or feeding on certain species of marine plants or maybe even corals in certain instances.
Uh, John Doe said, "I meant walking on land. Most mammals move in the pattern if you study biomechanics."
Um,
He was referencing
yeah, quadrupedal animals and
fish. He was referencing the fish.
oh, not specifically Tiktaalik, but just marine fish in general. Um, yeah, I guess yeah, that is yeah, pretty astounding that in some cases it's almost like it's like it has changed dramatically. But in other instances, yeah, it is quite similar. Yeah, I think I'll also dive into just regular fish as well, like even comparing it with different species of sharks. I do wonder, but it probably was similar, like how different in fish locomotion it has changed from the Cambrian period when you have small fish like Pikaia, which existed around 510 million years ago, like during the later stages of the Cambrian period, and would create a wide variety of other lineages of fish, but still retain that very basic locomotion, which in some cases you could almost say is one of the most successful groups of animals to exist. But then jellyfish enter the arena and they just, slightly swim and exist for hundreds of millions of years. At least that's what it possibly seems to be. I'm not sure who the fish are specifically in this instance, however. There are probably some species of Silurian fish. I believe the Eurypterids seem to go extinct towards some part of the Devonian period. They do have a bit of a basic like locomotion. Whoa. Okay. I don't think bass existed back then. I think they're a much newer, more recent species of fish. Now, it is possible. Now, they definitely were around earlier into the Cenozoic era when referring to bass, but I'm not even sure when it refers to the Mesozoic. And then there's this random trilobite. It does seem to be that trilobites were possibly scavengers in some instances, but I there was possibly evidence for certain species even being hunters, so possibly even feeding on just other species of trilobites. But Eurypterids, it seems the largest one was probably reaching close to 6 feet in length. They're pushing around 1.8 meters. Now, I think some might be imagining quite a short in diameter species of like marine scorpion. But in reality, these animals were very powerfully built, especially for the time. But you could even say for arthropods in general, considering arthropods today are very small. But you might have even had certain species like go after orthocones, but they never came to the land, however. They might be distant relatives of today's horseshoe crabs, fleas, and scorpions, but they definitely were not true scorpions. We announced the discovery of a complete specimen of a tetrapod like fish called Elpistostege watsoni, which reveals extraordinary new information about the evolution of the vertebrate hand, said Flinders University's Professor John Long, senior author of the study. Professor Long and colleagues examined the 380 million year old specimen using the high energy computed tomography. Okay, so, whoa, that's hold on a second. Um, is this before Tiktaalik? I'm sort of wondering because that seems a bit old for um being a descendant of Tiktaalik. The skeleton of Elpistostege Watsoni's pectoral fin revealed the presence of a humerus or an arm, radius and ulna or forearm, rows of carpus or wrist, and phalanges organized in digits or fingers. This is the first time that we have unequivocally discovered fingers locked in a fin with fin rays in any known fish. The articulating digits in the fin are like the finger bones found in the hands of most animals. This finding pushes back the origin of digits in vertebrates to the fish level and tells us that the patterning for the vertebrate hand was first developed deep in evolution just before fishes left the water. No! So now Tiktaalik has been pushed further into the descendant lineage. Gosh, it's not him anymore.
It says 375 million years on him.
Yeah, that would be after this creature.
Oh,
Gosh. Well, he had a little bit of time. So what about him then is more primitive than Tiktaalik? Oh, I don't think I see hind legs on this guy.
maybe they made it, and that's how we got vertebrates.
Seems to be. I will say though, he has a much more narrow snout compared to Tiktaalik. Very odd shape. But yeah, I don't see any hind fins. Oh, well, there's the skeleton. Oh, here he comes. Oh, he's swimming away. Oh, there he is. That seemed a bit slow.
Why does it look like he has feet?
It seemed a bit quick. Yeah, there they are. Well, I mean, he kind of does. Let's see. Actually, I think we should step forward in time and bring up some other creatures, like the Moschops. Moschops.
I'm about to blow this up.
Yeah, this is a good representation of the creature from the Permian period. So this is around 256 million years ago, around possibly 6 million years, not 6 million years. Maybe 5 million years before the Triassic would begin or the Mesozoic era. But this is a species of reptile that would have existed in different parts of South Africa and possibly even Tanzania during the late Permian and was an herbivore. Despite its odd skull structure, which some might assume this animal would be a species of carnivore. Actually, if you look at it, it does have somewhat similar dentition, even though it is still different to, diplodocids. Yeah, this creature is in many cases reconstructed as like the puppy of the Permian period, or how would I also describe it? Um, Not a viscacha. I'm trying to think of another mammal, like even certain marsupials. Oh my gosh. Oh wait, sorry. I guess this is actually a bit closer to the proto mammals. But yeah, wow. I don't think I've ever seen a mushops covered in this dense of a layer of fur. This is quite amazing. Wow. He almost looks like a husky that decided to go back in time and join his ancestors in the Permian. Or I mean not a husky, a Malamute. But this creature, in some instances, is probably reaching somewhere around 5 to 700 pounds, or a little over 310 kilograms, and was just likely feeding on different species of ferns at the time. This was before a wide variety of different types of vegetation would evolve later into the Mesozoic, especially the different species of flowers.
What's with the teeth?
Yeah, it is interesting. I mean, this is just one of those species of herbivores that had very elongated teeth, somewhat similar to the different species of diplodocids, like the dicryosaurs or the rebeccosaurids. They, in some instances, had even shorter teeth compared to their body size, unlike the mushops. So, this lineage of proto mammals would exist into the end of the Permian around 252 million years ago, but they would die out at around that time. It is interesting considering you did have certain other lineages of proto mammals like the Dicynodonts, which would continue into the end of the Triassic period around 201 million years ago. Yeah, I think there have been certain theories as to Moschops likely having a very or a bit of a headbutting scenario during the breeding season or the rut, considering it looks like Moschops had one of the most robust heads for its time. Like they were almost the Pachycephalosaurs.
It's interesting. I have trouble finding
Big time.
pictures on certain things, and this thing has a ton of them.
Yeah, I think Moschops is probably one of the more known species of its kind, especially for Permian herbivores. Yeah, but this furry one, it almost gives you like a Snoopy sort of a feel, slightly, or maybe Spike. Now this one is probably very accurate, except there's a problem. Butterflies likely did not occur during the Permian. Probably didn't even evolve until the early Cretaceous, around 140 million years ago, because well, they need flowers, and there weren't any around in the Permian. But maybe he time traveled. So, over the past decade, fossils informing the fish to tetrapod transition have helped to better understand anatomical transformations associated with breathing, hearing, and feeding as the habitat changed from water to land on Earth. So, lead author Dr. Richard Cloutier, a researcher at the Université du
Akita,
Quebec, Rimouski.
Akita Baron Keck said, I think that dinosaur eats too much.
Well, the problem is that the dinosaur still won't evolve for another 30 million years at that point. But besides that, no, he's just an herbivore. He's completely okay. He needs to be taking in probably around 30 pounds. I'd say 20 to 30 pounds of food each day. That's a lot, though, even for an animal that size. or pushing around 10 kilograms.
Oh,
So
he's getting a lot of fiber.
probably maybe his younger, the juveniles and lost shops would be feeding on more high protein vegetation. Um, okay, so let's see what else. So back to this tetrapod. The origin of digits relates to developing the capability for the fish to support its weight in shallow water or for short trips out on land. The increased number of small bones in the fin allows more planes of flexibility to spread out its weight through the fin. The other features the study revealed concerning the structure of the upper arm bone or humerus, which also shows features present that are shared with early amphibians. Yeah, I mean, I would also assume even to like the current day mammals. So Elpistostege watsoni is not necessarily our ancestor. Really? Because it sounds like it's coming before Tiktaalik, unless this was an earlier species of tetrapod, but the branch that it belonged to in evolution died out. So maybe that's the case. Tiktaalik was a continuing, maybe lineage. But it is closest we can get to a true transitional fossil, an intermediate between fishes and tetrapods. I still think you would need another transition, like even like maybe even several more beforehand. But you can still make drastic jumps in evolution in a pretty short amount of time. Oh, that's it. I guess there was somebody else we could bring up. Who's that hideous guy? Okay, Rubigia. Rubidgea. Is this him? It is a very wide back part of the skull for this type of a Gorgonopsian. He almost looks like the relatives of the Moschops. I wonder if it brought up the wrong lineage of proto mammals. Unless this is one of the Gorgonopsians with just a wide skull. There we go. Yeah, that's him. I guess, wow, maybe it is referring to the back part of the skull. That's interesting. Also, his canine is rather far back, even compared to most other Gorgonopsians. It's one of the smaller species. So, this is a group of proto-mammals that existed during the late Permian, probably first evolving around 262 million years ago. And they ranged from being around the size of a cat or a large cat, maybe around 20 to 30 pounds, or pushing a little over 10 kilograms. Excuse me. And they would then go extinct around 252 million years ago. So, right at the end of the Permian period. And this animal, yeah, wow, he has very long cheek structures towards the back of his skull. I guess this is just not to what you see in certain, especially larger species such as Inostrancevia, which could weigh probably around 1,000 to 1,100 pounds, or a little over 500 kilograms. So I guess it's sharing the Inostrancevia is sharing with the smaller species. Inostrancevia wasn't the only large Gorgonopsian to exist. They did feed on members of Stallacaridae, so which is the lineage of tusked dicynodonts that Placerius and Lysowikia would evolve from later in the Triassic, and as well as this unfortunate Lystrosaurus. But then you would have had it where they would have preyed on other species of proto-mammals like the Moschops. But yeah, I mean, these are really good reconstructions. It is interesting. You could call them one of the earliest saber tooths to exist. These were not close relatives, however, the saber tooth cats that would later appear in the Miocene, Pliocene, and Pleistocene epochs, especially later on to the Ice Age. Though it is possible with these proto mammals that they might have been warm blooded. And there seems to be evidence for these creatures containing keratin and specifically fur. So very hair like structures. Gosh, he's got a chin. What's up with this guy? He looks like Lord Farquaad to an extent. um, anyway, yeah, he also has really. Oh yeah, here we go. It's comparing him with a wide variety of other species.
Yeah, he looks like he has a giant smile on his face.
Yeah, he does. Um, yeah, yeah. This specific species, it's got a much longer and narrow sort of snout. This is probably Inostrancevia down here. This might be Lancaniae, maybe. Trying to think of what species this is. He's got a very large brow, and a bit of a broader sort of skull and structure. In fact, I wonder if that is the species we've been looking at. Is that him? Whoa. Wait, actually, hold on a second. Yeah, it looks similar. Yeah, I wonder if that's him. Yeah, I'd say the Gorgonopsians are some of the most interesting species of proto-mammals to exist back in the Permian period. In some cases, they also look like they would be a good pet, but then again, you'd have to be kind of careful with these guys. They do need a very large amount of stalacarids in their diet, especially the later species. I don't think that was the same creature. Oh, yeah, I think that was it with this. So that was interesting. Okay, well, let's head to another part of the Phanerozoic era. Oh, okay. So over to the Cenozoic. So from news.cgtn.com, Mailu population keeps steady rise in North China's Inner Mongolia. So the population of Mailu in North China's Inner Mongolia on an autonomous region has been growing steadily, reaching 74 after the first batch of 27 deer was introduced in 2021, according to the Regional Forestry and Grassland Bureau. This marks a major achievement in China's efforts to rebuild a rare species population in alpine and frigid zones north of 40 degrees north latitude. So I'm guessing it's referring to a deer. Yep. Here we go. This specific species of Chinese deer. I think they reach somewhere around maybe 3 to 400 pounds, or a little over 170 kilograms. It's definitely during the rut. A very odd face compared to most other species of deer. Mailu, a rare species worldwide, has been successfully reintroduced into the wild in China. On September 29th, 2021, the National Forestry and Grassland Administration and the China Wildlife Conservation Association jointly released 27 Mailu into the Dakinshan National Nature Reserve in Inner Mongolia. In May 2022, 9 Mailu fawns were born. It was the first generation of offspring born to the Mailu that were released into the wild in the region. It was also the first time a wild Mailu population was established in the transition zone between North China and the Mongolian Plateau region. Wonder how large this specific area is. Oh, they're putting collars on them. Well, one. There's a magpie.
Just
That
one.
I think that might be a cow or a doe. Just wondering if I'm seeing antlers, but I think these pictures were all taken the same time of year. So Mailu herd is seen at the Dakingshan National Nature Reserve in Inner Mongolia Autonomous Region, North China, October 17, 2025. Okay, so yeah, it was last fall. Okay, it's a doe. According to researchers, the deer were fitted with Beidou satellite positioning collars to track their movements and home ranges in real time. During breeding seasons, a dual monitoring system combining 24-hour infrared cameras and on site human observation was activated. That sounds concerning. It's during the rut, and you have to have it where the males are fighting each other, and it sounds like they're prevented from doing anything offensive. No, they're not. Never mind. Measures such as winter supplementary feeding, wetland restoration, water source improvement, and controlled human disturbance have been implemented to continuously optimize their living environment. Through several consecutive years of natural breeding during calving seasons, the total Milu population in Inner Mongolia has reached 74, an increase of 174% compared to the initial release. The population has maintained natural reproduction for 5 years in a row, indicating a more balanced age structure and expanding range. Well, this is really good to hear, considering I think in some cases there seemed to be less than 1,000 of these deer a few years ago. Do have relatively small antlers. They almost have a reindeer sort of a hoof type of a structure, which is interesting considering they don't live in the same type of habitat as reindeer. Milu, also known as Pure David's deer, are endemic to China where they bear the nickname Saibu Sheng, or like none of the four. Due to their unique features, a horse's face, a donkey's tail, cow like hooves, and a stag's antlers. The Mailu is under first class national protection in China. Thanks to years of dedicated efforts, China's captive bred Mailu population has grown significantly and wild populations have been reestablished, making the species a successful example of global wildlife population restoration. Currently, its population exceeds 14,000 across the country. Oh, never mind. Maybe I confused it with like the musk deer or something. Considering I don't think we have really much of an estimate on that species, but that's also not a deer. So, or that's interesting. I swear there was like a very rare species of deer, much more so than the Milu, over in China. Okay, well, I mean, these guys seem relatively healthy, but I am really curious about specifically, just their overall toe structure. It's just very similar to a reindeer. Okay, or oh, yeah, very wide. I guess that's why they were also claiming that it looks more similar to a cow's. Their antlers almost look like a bit like a roe deer to an extent, despite being a bit more distantly related to the roe deer over in Europe. Their heads almost like that of an elk to an extent. Yeah, very mixed combination of different species of deer. Oh, I thought that was a fish. From 13wham.com. 270-pound loggerhead sea turtle Timmy returns to Atlantic after rehabilitation in Key West.
That is a big turtle.
Yeah, I'm not sure if he looks shocked. Like his eyes are extremely
He
exposed.
doesn't look that big in there.
No. Well, yeah, he's probably a small turtle. No, he's not.
He's
He's
270 pounds.
yeah, he's not tiny. Guess I was thinking of like a young leatherback. Yeah, but for a loggerhead, yeah, that's okay. Hey, guessing that's when they're releasing him or they rescued him?
He looks bigger there.
No, they returned him. Yeah. So I'm guessing that's at the rehabilitation center.
I don't know, it looked like he was in the water.
Key West, Florida. Hundreds of people lined a Key West beach Friday to watch Timmy, a 270-pound loggerhead sea turtle, or pushing some around like 120 kilograms, returned to the Atlantic after weeks of rehabilitation. Turtle Hospital staff carried the massive turtle onto the sand at Fort Zachary Taylor Historic State Park as spectators crowded around, many holding up phones to capture the moment. Once placed on the beach, Timmy slowly made her way toward the waters just before disappearing into the ocean. Yeah, it is interesting how she'll instinctively find her own migration route. For the caregivers who helped nurse her back to health, The release marked an important victory not only for Timmy but also for the future of the species. Seeing a turtle like Timmy that survived our oceans for so many decades, getting a reproductive female like her returned to her ocean home is important for the survival of their species. Turtle Hospital General Manager Bete Zarkelbach said the endangered loggerhead had won over staff during her rehabilitation, and that affection appeared to spread well beyond the hospital. Hundreds turned out to witness her return to the wild. Hmm. So seeing the hundreds of people coming out for Timmy's release today, it warms my heart, and I know that compassion is contagious. You said inspiring that connection between people and wildlife can play an important role in conservation. Most important thing we can do to help save sea turtles is to fall in love with them. So to see these people come out and their takeaway to be in love with Timmy organically, and they're going to want to protect sea turtles and our oceans. Florida Representative Jim Mooney, who attended the release, said protecting the Keys environment requires educating future generations about its importance. Okay, now it's just being repetitive. Okay. It said something at the top, though. According to the Turtle Hospital in Marathon, Timmy is a female loggerhead sea turtle estimated to be between 70 and 80 years old. Wow. I'm not entirely sure how long loggerhead sea turtles can live for, but maybe they're one of the species that can live for over 150 years. I'm wondering if the loggerhead is what Crush was in Finding Nemo. I think that's who it is, or what he is.
50 to 80 years or more, with some individuals potentially reaching 100.
Weird. Hmm. Well, I guess she'll be out for a little bit longer.
She doesn't even look old.
Yeah, not really. Though, I mean, it is a reptile. So it doesn't lose moisture in the same way that different species of mammals do, especially people. Okay. I guess let's head to another part of the world. So from the Smithsonian do monkeys keep pets? Oh no. Study finds widespread primate interactions with other animal species from mice to deer. This social behavior might reveal the evolutionary roots of traits that underlie pet keeping in humans, scientists say, from caregiving to tolerance and curiosity. But it's not the same as a person keeping a cat or a dog. He's somewhere in Asia and he's petting one of the native squirrels. It's like, I was so close to capturing those nuts, but the deer took them. Like, yeah, I know how you feel. I had some fruit taken by one the other day. So when a tuft gray langur strokes a grizzled giant squirrel in Yala National Park, Sri Lanka. Huh, I thought it would have actually been a bit further north. So when a mouse wandered into the white-cheeked gibbon's enclosure at the Shanghai Zoo, monkeys didn't try to eat it or even chase it away. One female primate scooped up the rodent and gently held and caressed it. University of Oxford evolutionary biologist Cyril Guetter watched the interaction and he was mystified. Yeah, I'm actually kind of shocked too. But I think it's really the zoos in Indonesia that at least a few years back were not in good condition. I wasn't quite sure what I was looking at. He wrote an article for the conversation. The gibbon treated the tiny rodent with remarkable gentleness. I couldn't stop wondering why. Working with an international group of researchers, Grutter then uncovered more examples of primates interacting closely with other species. A young male bonobo carefully cradled a mongoose pup. Hmm. Yeah, bonobos are the smaller relative of the chimpanzee, and they can still be aggressive, but they are um not as, I guess, prone to attacking other animals as chimps are. So some monkeys climbed onto the backs of pigs, others mounted deer, and that That's occurred over in, I think, certain areas of Japan with the macaques and was it the not the sambar deer, um, the sika deer over in Japan. But I think also that might be on specific islands. So a tufted gray langur stroked a squirrel. A group of stump-tailed macaques worked together to groom a stray dog. Okay, that does not sound surprising for. Oh, yeah, certain areas of, guess, India or Sri Lanka.
They're looking for treats.
Yeah, it seems to be. Seeing what insects are on the dog. Hey, you've got thousands of fleas. Let us help out. In all, the team tallied 427 cases from scientific papers, media reports, and a global survey of 37 primatologists. Oh, wow. The interactions, most of which included play or grooming, occurred both in the wild and in captivity. They involved 88 primate species interacting with 127 different species, some of which were also primates. Researchers published the findings in July in the journal Primates. So the compilation reveals that this
Wait,
is
the journal was called Primates?
yeah. This is quite a common behavior. Grutter tells new scientist Michael Marshall. The new work is only a first step, but it's starting to fill a void on the subject in the mainstream scientific literature. We're hoping that this study is also a wake up call for primatologists or zoologists more generally to look for similar behaviors in both the wild and in captivity. One of Grutter's favorite encounters occurs in Japan, where macaques have been regularly seen grooming and riding on the backs of Zika deer. Yeah, probably on Honshu. It starts with something mundane. Macaques feeding in trees drop fruit and leaves that deer eat. What? Drops fruit and leaves that deer eat. And deer also consume macaque feces around sleeping sites. Wow. Okay, that is not something I knew. Um, Usually it's just different species of birds, especially ground dwelling birds that might do that. Of course, insects, or there have been instances with gorillas eating their own dung, like
Dogs?
or oh right, yeah, that's usually something that I need to double check why they do that because
Rabbits?
I don't think I've heard wolves or coyotes even foxes make that kind of behavior. Rabbits, it seems to be with herbivores for further processing of the nutrients, but yeah, I definitely find that odd with deer consuming, yeah, the waste of macaques or monkeys in general. But macaques are one of the only species of monkeys native to Japan. So Cedric Sewer, an animal behavior researcher at the University of Strasbourg in France, tells Smithsonian Magazine. But it doesn't stop there. Macaques groom deer and eat their parasites, play with them, and ride them. Yeah, I mean, by grooming the deer, yeah, they're consuming probably like the different species of insects. Yeah, and they just piggyback ride them. And they even try to mate with the deer, a behavior that might be spread through social transmission among the primates. Yeah. Well, we are talking about macaques. Sewer has published studies on the macaques and deer, but he was not involved in the new research. With the teams assembled anecdotes, he says scattered curiosities become data set one can interrogate. But he emphasizes that the observations were not a designed experiment. The number the numbers describe where scientists and cameras have been, not how often these behaviors occur. And here the macaques are. Female northern white cheek gibbon holds a mouse at the Shanghai Zoo. Oh, wow. Hmm.
Is it trying to mate or is it just riding it?
Oh, yeah. We don't know. I think the Sika deer is a male, but I don't know. Yakushima, Japan. Yeah, definitely Yakushima. Not all interactions documented by the team seemed friendly. 26 of the incidents were deemed abusive, though these ranged widely. In one case, a male baboon in Saudi Arabia seemed to have kidnapped a domestic puppy, per the paper, and carried it around for long periods. Yeah, I mean, that doesn't sound surprising for monkeys in the
Nope,
Middle
but
East.
cats just do that? Take things?
You mean baboons? But yeah, they can do it too. But both most monkeys in general. The researchers identified 13 instances where the other animal died from violent handling, including birds, penguins, primates, and a domestic cat.
Wait, it said pangolins?
Yep. These cases did not necessarily stem from ill will or aggression or the part of the primates. Some might have simply been botched attempts at caring for the other creature. Patterns emerged in how the primates interacted with other species based on their age and sex. Juvenile primates were more likely to engage in play, while females were more likely to groom. Most interactions were initiated by the primates. These reports may shed light on the evolutionary origins of pet keeping behavior in humans. Team writes. I think it's very different with people. Of course, these cross species relationships aren't the same as humans having a cat or a dog. The authors say so themselves. Nearly all these interactions are ephemeral, whereas keeping a pet is a durable caretaking bond. Source says, but the behaviors may represent some of the evolutionary building blocks from which human animal companionship eventually emerged. I think some of these instances are, I don't think they help with that um, theory. A few cases, however, showed some longer term care. A group of black striped capuchin monkeys seemingly adopted an infant common marmoset in Brazil in 2004. A marmoset. It's not hitting me what that is. The young monkey received care from two adoptive mothers, per the paper, and tolerance from others in the group, where it remained for at least 10 months. A captive western gorilla named Coco. Oh, yeah. I don't think she's still around. Oh, what's another monkey? It's one oh, it's like the white tuft-eared monkey?
The marmoset.
Yeah. Wow. Wow, that's a youngster. Almost like looking at a baby, not necessarily a baby, but I guess you could say a full-grown mouse lemur or, an eye. So from grooming to cradling and protective posturing toward a kitten named Allball in the 1980s. News reports in 2017 described a crested macaque in an Israeli zoo repeatedly cuddling, grooming, and playing with a chicken that wandered into its enclosure. Next, Sewer says he would like to see studies that take the other species' point of view. He adds almost everything we know is measured from the primate side. Deer, dogs, and pigs are treated as a setting rather than as partners. If some of these interactions, such as the primates riding the Sika deer, are to be seen as shared culture between the species and they are not one sided. This kind of relationship, he adds, only makes sense if you watch both. Is there anything else? No. Okay. Well, this was quite a few odd observations, but I mean, kind of expected with the different species of monkeys that they mentioned. Okay, so we're going to give everybody a minute to put any comments into the chat. Okay, well, thanks for joining. And from prehistoric to present, my name is Ethan. This is Creature Guy Live Daily News. Happy International Tetrapod Day. And we are streaming on both Rumble, YouTube, and Kick. And remember that nothing is better than all animals all the time.